What if the laws of physics aren't laws, but merely suggestions? Around the globe are documented anomalous zones where time, gravity, and reality itself seem to break down. Today, we are opening the case files on 10 locations on Earth that science simply cannot explain. The Dragon's Triangle. In 1952, the Japanese government dispatched the research vessel Times Kaio Maru No. 5 Times to investigate a patch of ocean south of Tokyo that had been swallowing ships for centuries. The vessel and its entire crew of 31 vanished without a trace, prompting Japan's Hydrographic Office to designate the region a maritime danger zone. What made the incident baffling was the Times Kaio Maru Asterisks final, fragmented transmission. It wasn't a distress call about a storm. The crew reported an anomaly, white and churning, and the sea opening up, before the transmission was cut by a violent burst of static. This region is known as the Dragon's Triangle. It mirrors the more famous Bermuda Triangle, but unlike its Atlantic counterpart, the Dragon's Triangle has a verifiable government warning attached to it. The triangle has claimed more than fishing boats. In the 1980s, the Times Derbyshire Asterisk, a massive bulk carrier over 900 feet long, was lost with all 44 people aboard. While officially attributed to a typhoon, she vanished in an area notorious for rogue waves. Investigators were baffled by the Times Derbyshire's destruction. The wreckage was found in a compact field, suggesting an implosion rather than a storm breakup. It was as if a giant hand had plucked it from the surface and crushed it. This aligns with ancient legends. For centuries, sailors have spoken of white dragons rising from the water. These are not just waves. They describe luminous, swirling vortexes of water and light that appear from a calm sea, pulling vessels under. These accounts were long dismissed as fantasy. But the final, fragmented transmission from the Times Kaio Maru Times gives these old tales a terrifying, modern context. Military vessels report catastrophic equipment failure, compasses spin, global positioning systems go dark, and radios dissolve into static. Pilots and sailors describe an ocean that defies physics, erupting from perfect calm into a violent maelstrom with no warning, as a thick fog muffles all sound. Instruments behave erratically, as if influenced by an untraceable magnetic field. Most disturbing are the reports of lost time. A Japanese patrol boat in 1997 entered a small fog bank. When they emerged minutes later, their clocks were off by almost 2 hours, their ship dozens of miles from its last position. The crew, all experienced sailors, had no memory of the intervening time. Scientific theories undersea volcanoes, methane hydrate deposits fail to account for the precise electromagnetic disruption, the phantom weather, or the temporal anomalies that suggest space-time itself is warped. The Times Kaio Maru No. 5 Times was sent to find answers and instead became part of the puzzle. It remains a case file where every scientific explanation has failed. What invisible force operates in this patch of ocean, capable of erasing ships from existence? A patch of ocean that blinds our technology is one thing, but what happens when the anomaly isn't a void, but a performance? Our next case takes us to a remote valley in Norway, where impossible objects have been putting on a silent, luminous show for centuries. The Zone of Silence. On July 11, 1970, a United States Athena test missile launched from Green River, Utah. Halfway through its flight, all telemetry ceased. The missile veered thousands of miles off course and crashed deep within a remote patch of the Chihuahuan Desert, a place locals call the Times Zona del Silencio Asterisk. When a retrieval team arrived, they stepped into a world of profound sensory deprivation. Radios emitted only static, compasses spun, and even mechanical watches began to lose time. This desolate 50-mile stretch of desert is a technological dead zone. Radio waves, television, and satellite signals vanish. A portable radio falls silent. A global positioning system unit goes dark. The phenomenon is so potent, it pulled a 9,000-pound military rocket from the sky. Scientists discovered the zone is saturated with magnetic minerals and a high concentration of meteoric material. This concentration of meteoric iron is higher than almost anywhere on Earth, creating a unique magnetic resonance. But the anomalies are not just electromagnetic, they are biological. Researchers have noted strange mutations in the local flora and fauna. Cacti grow in bizarre, distorted shapes, and desert reptiles display unusual coloration and behavior. It's as if the environment itself is being rewritten by an unseen force. Locals also report that the rocks in the center of the hotspots are often found to be warm to the touch, even in the cool of the pre-dawn hours, suggesting a geothermal or energetic process that is completely undocumented. The theory of a magnetic vortex fails to account for the anomalies. The magnetic hotspots are not stationary. They times move asterisk, shifting across the desert floor. Worse is the visual evidence. For decades, ranchers reported strange colored orbs hovering above the desert, moving in deliberate patterns before streaking into the sky. Visitors have even photographed metallic, disc-shaped objects sitting silently on the ground. The most disturbing accounts are of entities. A couple with a broken-down vehicle reported two tall, blonde-haired figures in silver uniforms who provided them water before vanishing. A local rancher, Ernesto Diaz, claimed his family was frequently visited by three humanoids who spoke perfect Spanish, asked only for water, and, when asked where they were from, would point to the sky and say, "From above." This zone remains a place where our most advanced science is rendered utterly primitive. What is this place? Is it a simple geological anomaly? Or is it something more deliberate, a beacon that attracts phenomena far stranger than scrambled radio waves? Silent lights in the sky are a puzzle. But the true terror begins when these forces descend from the sky and interact with us directly. The next file is not just a mystery, it's a crime scene. The Hessdalen Lights. For over 2 centuries, a remote valley in Norway has hosted a performance no one can explain. Silent, brilliant spheres of light yellow, white, and red dance in the darkness, hovering for hours or streaking at impossible speeds. This is not folklore, but the scientifically documented Hessdalen phenomenon. The lights are tangible, often appearing just feet above the ground, behaving with apparent intelligence. In 1983, scientists established Project Hessdalen, a serious investigation with radar, high-sensitivity cameras, and spectrum analyzers. They captured the lights on film and radar. The data defied all known physics. Radar showed objects traveling at 18,000 miles per hour, making instantaneous right-angle turns that would defy the tolerance of any known aircraft. The data was perfect, but it was for something that, according to our physics, asterisk cannot exist asterisk. Spectrographic analysis was equally baffling, showing a unique, unidentified spectrum. The data showed the lights were sometimes cold, emitting no heat, while at other times they registered intense thermal spikes. Most baffling of all was the physical evidence. On several occasions, the lights were seen descending to ground level. After they departed, investigators found the snow and soil beneath had been swirled in perfect circular patterns, and the ground itself was scorched in a ring. Yet the snow times inside times the ring remained frozen and untouched. This suggests a containment field, a technology far beyond any known capability. Conventional explanations fall apart. It's not ball lightning, which is rare and requires thunderstorms. These lights appear in clear, cold weather and last for hours. Piezoelectric or plasma battery theories fail to account for the radar signatures of times solid objects times or their impossible speeds. Most unsettling is the light's apparent awareness. They often appear just outside the range of instruments, as if conscious of observation. Locals report the lights pacing their cars or hovering silently over their homes. The scientific station in Hessdalen remains active, collecting more data on a phenomenon that refuses to be categorized. What force has chosen this remote Norwegian valley to conduct its silent, luminous ballet? The Dyatlov Pass. When rescuers reached the campsite on Kholat Syakhl in the Ural Mountains, they found a scene that defied logic. The tent, the 9 hikers' only shelter, had been sliced open from within. Footprints showed the group had fled into the negative 30-degree darkness, some of them wearing only socks. The hikers, led by Igor Dyatlov, were experienced professionals. Yet, something compelled them to abandon their shelter. The first 2 victims were found nearly a mile away, shoeless and in their undergarments. 3 others were found between that spot and the camp, as if attempting a desperate return. But it was the discovery of the final 4, months later, that moved the case from accident to something sinister. Found in a ravine under 13 feet of snow, they bore injuries unlike anything examiners had ever seen. One victim, Semyon Zolotaryov, had ribs fractured with the force of a car crash. Another, Lyudmila Dubinina, had the same massive, symmetrical chest trauma. The most baffling part? Asterisk. None times of these victims had any external wounds or bruising. It was as if they had been crushed by an immense, invisible pressure. Furthermore, Ludmila was found without her tongue. The impossible evidence mounted. Several garments were found to be highly radioactive. Their skin had a strange orange-brown tan, and their hair had turned grey. This physical evidence, while bizarre, was not the only anomaly. Another group of hikers, camping 50 kilometers south of Dyatlov's team on the very same night, reported a terrifying sighting. They testified to seeing strange orange spheres, or glowing orbs, moving silently and rapidly through the sky, heading directly toward Kholat Syakh. This testimony was corroborated by military personnel. These were not flares, nor any known Soviet aircraft. The investigators were forced to consider that the force was not from the ground, but from the sky. There were no signs of other people, no animal tracks, and no evidence of an avalanche. The official investigation was abruptly closed, its cause listed as an unknown compelling force, a clinical admission of total scientific failure. What phenomenon could exert that kind of selective, impossible force? What did the hikers see that was so terrifying they chose to freeze rather than face it? The forces that haunt the Dyatlov Pass are invisible and violent. But our next case file takes us to a place where the anomaly is not only visible, it's a 4-mile-long river of boiling water, and it flows where no science says it should. The boiling river of the Amazon. Deep in the Peruvian Amazon, there is a river that boils. Not a small hot spring, but a 4-mile-long waterway so hot it cooks any animal that falls into its current. For centuries, it was considered a legend. But in 2011, geoscientist Andres Russo found it. What he discovered defies geothermal science. The river, Shenay Timpishka, flows at over 190 degrees Fahrenheit, yet it's over times 400 miles times from the nearest active volcano. Russo, trained to dismiss the legend, described hearing not a gentle stream, but the roar of a waterfall. He saw steam rising through the jungle canopy. The heat was so intense, touching the water would cause severe burns in less than a second. The shaman who protect the site, the Ashaninka people, hold it as sacred. They believe the heat comes from a giant serpent, Yakumama*. Russo documented birds, frogs and snakes poached instantly in the churning white water. The river is a thermal executioner, but its mystery is not just its heat, but its purity. The water is remarkably clean, almost like distilled water, not the sulfurous, mineral-heavy sludge one would expect from a typical geothermal system. Furthermore, the heat is times consistent*. In a normal hot spring system, the temperature would decrease as it flows. Yet, this river maintains its lethal temperature for nearly all of its 4-mile length. This suggests the heat is not from a single source, but is being times injected, times into the riverbed along its entire course. The shaman used the water carefully for cooking and healing. The scientific explanation remains a puzzle. The most plausible theory is a fault-fed hot spring system where water is heated deep in the Earth's crust, but this theory is incomplete. The sheer volume of water and the extreme sustained temperature suggest a system far more powerful than any documented. The amount of geothermal energy required is staggering. It is a place that forces us to admit that our geological models are incomplete. What ancient terrestrial engine, hidden deep beneath the Amazon, is fueling this 4-mile artery of boiling water? From the impossible heat of the Amazon, we travel to the impossible cold of Death Valley. Here, the anomaly isn't a river, but hundreds of rocks, some weighing 700 pounds, that are moving across the desert floor all by themselves. Racetrack Playa. On a dried lakebed in Death Valley, a mystery unfolds in slow motion. Rocks, some weighing over 700 pounds, slide across the cracked earth, carving long trails behind them. No one has ever seen them move, and there are no footprints or animal tracks. This is Racetrack Playa, a stage for an impossible performance. The sailing stones are blocks of dolomite and syenite that have traveled for hundreds of feet. The trails are the most baffling part. They are precise, defined tracks. Some stones carve a straight line, others suddenly make a sharp, 90-degree turn. Pairs of stones, starting side by side, will slide in parallel, only for one to stop abruptly while the other continues, or for the two to diverge completely. The mystery deepens when examining stones that moved in opposite directions, or against the prevailing winds. The force required to move a 700-pound boulder is immense, yet the ground is undisturbed. The sheer physics of the problem are what baffle geologists. The coefficient of friction on the dry mud is incredibly high. To move a 700-pound block would require either a hurricane-force wind or a force that can times lift, times it slightly. But the trails show no signs of lifting, only a heavy gouge. Some trails even show the rock times stopping asterisk, then times reversing, times its course, a behavior no natural force can rationally explain. For decades, scientists proposed mundane theories. Recently, a research team times thought times they had the answer. Thin, floating sheets of ice, pushed by a light breeze. They even captured a video of the event. But this solution only deepens the mystery. It fails to account for the most anomalous data. It does not explain how stones starting in the same times ice sheet can move in radically different, even opposite, directions. It struggles to account for the precise 90-degree turns. And it certainly cannot explain the historical tracks, many of which show movement patterns that defy the physics of a simple wind-blown ice sheet, including trails that appear to move times uphill times on the playa's almost flat surface. The ice theory is not an answer. It is just one more piece of a puzzle that refuses to be solved. Are all the tracks the result of this rare ice and wind ballet? Or is there another, unseen force at play on the silent floor of racetrack playa? From a geological puzzle, we move to a biological one. The laws of nature are not just being broken in the desert, they are being defied by a single, living organism in the Italian countryside. The double tree of Casorzo. In the countryside of Piedmont, Italy, stands a biological impossibility. It is not one tree, but two. A full-grown cherry tree grows perfectly out of the center of a mature mulberry tree. This is the Bialbero di Casorzo. This is not grafting, nor a simple epiphyte. This is a large, complex, woody plant growing directly from the trunk of another, completely different species. The scientific problem is one of survival. A cherry tree requires massive resources, soil, water, nutrients. Yet this one is perched high in the air, its base in a cavity of the mulberry. Where is it getting its sustenance? The mulberry tree itself is perfectly healthy. In their respective seasons, both trees bear fruit. This is not a new phenomenon. Locals report the tree has been in this state for decades, meaning this impossible arrangement is not a short-lived fluke but a stable, long-term ecosystem. The cherry tree is times mature asterisk, with a large woody trunk of its own. Botanists note that in a normal parasitic relationship, the host mulberry would show signs of stress. But the mulberry of Casorzo is one of the healthiest in the region, suggesting a relationship that is not parasitic, but something symbiotic that science has not yet catalogued. The most common theory is that a bird dropped a cherry pit into a hollow in the mulberry's trunk. This alone is not impossible. What times is times impossible is what happened next. For that sapling to grow into a mature, fruit-bearing tree, it would need a vast times root system. The only plausible, yet fantastically improbable explanation is that the cherry tree's roots grew times down, times through the mulberry's hollow trunk, eventually reaching the soil below. In this scenario, the mulberry is acting as a living, organic conduit. This would be a 1 in a billion chance. Botanists are left to observe a phenomenon that violates the fundamental rules of their field. The double tree stands as a quiet, living paradox. What other defiance of nature is hiding in plain sight? A tree that breaks the rules of botany is a wonder. But our next case is a horror. We move to the frozen north, to a mystery where an entire village vanished, leaving behind clues that make no sense. The Angikuni Lake disappearance. In November 1930, fur trapper Joe Lebel pulled his sled toward the Inuit village on Angikuni Lake and found it completely, unnervingly silent. The entire community of nearly 30 people had vanished. He found pots of stew hanging over long cold fire pits. Inside the dwellings, tasks were half finished. A sealskin parka laid out with a needle still in it, as if the craftsman had stepped away for just a moment. The most baffling discovery was what they left behind. Their valuable rifles, essential for sustenance, were left leaning against doorways. No Inuit, no matter how rushed, would abandon their weapons or warm clothing in the brutal Canadian Arctic. It was a sign of a departure that defied all reason. Lebel then found the village's sled dogs perished from starvation, despite the village's stores of fish and meat being left untouched in the huts. Lebel mushed to the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, who returned and confirmed his account. They estimated the village had been empty for weeks. A search revealed no struggle and no tracks leading away from the village, despite recent snowfall. It was as if every inhabitant had been plucked, simultaneously, from the ground. The investigation took a darker turn at the village burial ground. An ancestral grave, one Lebel knew to be intact, had been disturbed. The heavy stones sealing it were stacked neatly to the side. The grave was empty. In Inuit culture, disturbing a grave is the most profound taboo. The case might have been dismissed, were it not for reports from other trappers. Around the time the village went silent, several independent witnesses reported a massive, cylindrical, glowing object in the sky, hovering directly over Anjikuni Lake. But the lights were not the only other clue. As Lebel and the Mounties continued their investigation, they reported seeing strange blue-green flickers of light on the horizon, like a form of static discharge, but in the clear, cold air. More chillingly, when they examined the long, cold fire pits, the pots of stew were covered in a strange, fluffy mold that none of the experienced men recognized, as if the village had been flash-frozen in a single, unnatural moment. The official records remain open. What force could compel an entire village to abandon their food, their weapons, and their shelter, and to commit an act of profound sacrilege before vanishing? A village that disappears is a terrifying prospect. But our next location is a place designed to make you disappear. We go to a labyrinth of rock in the Gobi Desert that plays tricks on the mind. The Mogicheng. In China's Gobi Desert lies a region locals call Mogicheng, or City of Satan. Travelers who enter this labyrinth of earthen spires report hearing impossible sounds on the wind, a guitar strumming, a baby's cry, a tiger's roar. These are complex, specific sounds that have no source. This auditory mirage isn't the only anomaly. Within the city's borders, compasses spin uselessly, and all sense of direction vanishes. The city is a massive formation of yardangs. While geologists know of Aeolian sound, Mogicheng is different. A team in 2005 reported hearing what sounded like thousands of bells, followed by a sudden silence, then the unmistakable wail of an infant. These sounds are often accompanied by visual distortions. Travelers report seeing mirages, but not of water. They describe seeing spectral images of cities, of ancient armies, and of massive, unidentifiable creatures moving on the horizon. This combination of auditory, visual, and magnetic phenomena creates a perfect trap, a sensory overload that leads to panic and disorientation. Compasses and global positioning system units become completely unreliable. The consequences are etched into the landscape. The region is littered with the skeletons of animals and, more disturbingly, humans who wandered into the labyrinth and could not find their way out. These are not ancient remains. Many are recent, belonging to explorers whose modern technology failed them completely. Local legends of lost souls now seem plausible. Scientists blame unique rock formations and temperature inversions, but this fails to account for the time specificity, times of the sounds, or their intelligent, non-random nature. And it does not explain the powerful magnetic field that turns a geological wonder into a deadly, inescapable trap. What force in this patch of desert can project the sounds of a lost world? For our final case, we leave the land and go beneath the waves, to a discovery that doesn't just challenge geology, but the entire timeline of human history itself. The Yonaguni Monument. In 1986, a dive tour operator off Yonaguni Island, Japan, plunged 80 feet below the surface and was confronted by a sight that should not exist. A massive, terraced stone structure, its face defined by impossibly sharp, right-angled corners. He was not looking at a reef. He was looking at a sunken pyramid. The discovery of the Yonaguni Monument ignited an intense debate. The structure is colossal, nearly 500 feet long, featuring vast, flat terraces, towering pillars, and a distinct staircase ascending its southern face. The central conflict is simple. Geologists insist it's natural. Others are convinced it's man-made. Mainstream science argues the sandstone simply fractured in straight lines, a process called jointing, and that millennia of ocean currents carved a formation that times coincidentally, times mimics artificial design. They call it pareidolia, our brains seeing patterns in chaos, but those who have dived the site, most notably Dr. Masaaki Kimura, a marine geologist, argue the evidence for design is overwhelming. Kimura's team has catalogued features that defy natural explanation. The loop road, a pathway encircling the structure. The main terrace, a massive platform bordered by perfect 90-degree angles. And the turtle, a large stone carved into a distinct shape. Kimura's evidence goes further. He has identified what appear to be carved post holes, suggesting a structure was once built on top of the stone platform. He also points to a feature known as the arch, a gateway carved from two massive megalithic stones fitted together with a precision that natural erosion cannot replicate. Perhaps most compelling is a massive 8-meter-tall stone face with distinct carved eyes and a mouth, which sits in the deep, staring out into the ocean. If Kimura is right, the implications are staggering. Based on rising sea levels, the structure must have been on dry land at least 10,000 years ago. This would make it twice as old as the pyramids of Giza, built millennia before the first known civilizations. It would mean a sophisticated, unknown culture capable of massive stone construction existed deep in our prehistory. The monument sits in silence, a riddle that science cannot answer, without rewriting its own textbooks. Is it a geological freak of nature? Or are we looking at the silent, submerged ruins of a lost civilization? 10 places, 10 case files. From the impossible depths of the Dragon's Triangle, to the silent, frozen slopes of the Ural Mountains, to the submerged steppes of a forgotten world. These are not just stories, they are cracks in the map of our reality. They are stark reminders that our planet is not the tame, understood, and conquered world we believe it to be. Science calls them anomalies, errors in the data. But perhaps they are something else. Perhaps they are signposts, pointing to a truth our instruments can't measure, and our theories are not yet ready to accept. The question is not just what times these places are. The real question is, what times is out there, still waiting to be found? The map of our world is full of anomalies. If you want to explore more places that defy explanation, subscribe and like this video. There are many more files left to open.